Hey, it's Christopher, aka the Bronze Age Nerd, and in this video, let's talk about FOMO, and is it actually a good thing? So if you've been living under a rock for the last year, you may not have heard about comic book market FOMO, and FOMO is fear of missing out. And FOMO has been a hot topic. There's dozens, if not hundreds of videos on YouTube dedicated to the topic of FOMO. Mostly what you'll hear is people grumbling about people who can't think for themselves, or they get too excited about spec news, all these different factors. And I'm not really going to get into that too much today. But what I wanted to talk about is what people might be overlooking about FOMO. All right, so how can FOMO be a good thing? Well, look at it this way. If there wasn't FOMO going on in the comic book marketplace, it would mean that the comic book marketplace has crashed. You don't believe me? Think about how much FOMO has driven the comic book market over the last year to maybe a year and a half. As announcements come out, or we learn about casting rumors, or any of the stuff that drives spec in the comic book market, what happens a lot is you'll see sales for that particular comic book where it's a character's first appearance, or a pivotal moment happens in a storyline. You'll see sales for that issue just start to jump through the roof. People, run to eBay or they run to Instagram and they pick up copies of that comic book. But you have to think about the flip side of what that means. If there wasn't FOMO, if people weren't running out and doing that, it would basically 100% mean that the comic book market had crashed and the market was dead, essentially. I think that the sort of silent assumption here is that comic book values should just be on the merits of the comic book or the characters themselves. Like what we saw for a long time in the comic book collectible market is a comic book like X-Men #1 was maybe expensive compared to newer comic books, but it wasn't necessarily tens of thousands of dollars to pick up a copy of it. Whereas comics like, the first appearance of Superman or the first appearance of Batman or, Amazing Fantasy 15, like all these different comic books that had huge major character first appearances in it were extremely valuable. I think the silent assumption there is that those comic books were like blue chip stocks. They were something that was an evergreen comic book. It was always going to be worth money. It was always going to be worth more money. And it was just going to accumulate value for years and years and years until it was millions of dollars or whatever the case may be. And now we're seeing comic books jump up in price based on instant reaction to stuff. US Agent is going to be in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. So now that comic books where his first appearances take place just skyrocket. And people look at that and they go, oh, that's just a sign that we're in a boom market. And both could be true. We could be in a boom market, but if that didn't happen, if that behavior wasn't going on, the health of the comic book market as it is right now wouldn't exist. Well, I'm not gonna make this video about the overall comic book market and the kind of impending question of whether or not a crash is coming. I will suffice it to say that I do believe a correction is going to happen. I think we've seen comic book collectible market and to some extent the baseball card and sports card collectible market basically change in a way that I don't think there's any coming back from. However, I don't think the levels that we're at are going to be sustainable forever as society begins to return to normal. So that's sort of my real quick explanation about what I think is going to happen to the collectibles market. But I think that we're still going to see these true first appearances of major characters and characters that are in the MCU and characters that are coming to the silver screen. We're really going to see those comic books maintain their value, if not continue to climb, is my personal opinion. I think we're just going to see a lot of the modern spec and a lot of the minor stuff maybe get kind of weeded out as people withdraw their money and put it into other interests. But to a huge extent, I think the cat's kind of out of the bag when it comes to comic books. There's so many people that have a lot invested in it that it's sort of almost at this point like a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's kind of keep going as long as people perceive there's value there. That's the way currency works. It's the way stocks work in a lot of ways. And I think it's the way that the comic book market is going right now. So that's my brief explanation for why I think FOMO can actually be a good thing, or at least a different way to look at FOMO, and maybe not sneer down our noses at it too much, because it is keeping this whole ball rolling right now. I want to thank you for watching this video, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one. And I like to remind you, as always, hey, read comics every day.